Welcome to this edition of Footprints in American History. Today we're going to talk about what you don't know about cancer, part 2. Now, the last video was after the first time I'd gone into the hospital and all the things that kind of led up to that first hospital visit. Not exactly fun. I went in there expecting to, thinking I was going in for an outpatient appointment, and turned out as no, I was going to be there for a few days, which they said 2 to 3, it ended up being 6. Well, that ended up leading to another hospital visit. So basically, let me just let you know about the purpose of this video. Okay, many of you have never dealt with cancer. You may have known somebody that fought it, something like that. But basically, the purpose I did this was because I was not expecting to ever get diagnosed with cancer. That was something that just came out of the blue for me. And it was a type of cancer that nobody in my family had ever dealt with. So how it happened, I just don't know. But I can tell you this is that the reason I did these videos, that I'm doing these videos, even though this is a history channel, I just feel people need to know this. They need to know this. Now, for me, it was because I'd gone 50 years between finding out what it was like to be a person in a hospital. The first time I went in was in either 1972, possibly 73. I went into hospital after having broken my arm. It was a simple fracture. For whatever reason, they decided to keep me overnight. And so that was my first time ever being a patient in a hospital. Well, this time was 2024. And so, I had been the person sitting next to the bed in the hospital many times. Now I found out what it was like to be the person in the hospital bed. There's a big difference. And so many of you are probably in those same shoes. You're used to visiting the person in the hospital, but you've never been the person laying in the bed. And I can tell you it's a whole different story. And by the way, if you want a good night's sleep, don't check into a hospital. You're not going to get a good night's sleep. Guaranteed, 3 a.m. you're going to hear time to check your vitals. And they'll do your vitals. And then with me, it was 4 a.m. they were coming in, taking blood from here, taking blood from here, taking blood from here. But I'll go into that probably a little bit further later. So shortly after that first hospital visit, I think I went a couple weeks, my sister came in to visit me from Texas. Now, she would drive with me to the appointments. I mean, every doctor appointment I went to, if they weren't able to make it, then basically I put them on the phone so they could listen or talk to the doctor. So what happened was my sister went with me to this doctor appointment. And, let me backtrack a little bit to what led to that. With this doctor appointment, what led to the second hospitalization was that I went to the hospital first time, okay? They had put in some stents into my esophagus to basically help me out. So what happened was, somewhere in there, I think it was a coughing incident I had one night. I just had some, if you've ever had that feeling where something just kind of slides down your throat and you end up coughing like crazy because of the irritation. I think that's what happened. So what had happened, they put some stents, okay, the first time in there to help me be able to swallow. So what happened was these stents were in there. Well, so I'm dealing with this, but I'm finding myself getting weaker and weaker and weaker. Now, there's a cat sitting right here next to me. I love her dearly. Her name is Nita. When she wants food, she gets very, very, very rambunctious. She's a great cat, but that's the one thing. There's no mercy when it comes to her stomach. That's how she is. Well, what was happening is I was getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And I couldn't understand why. I mean, I hardly had any energy to do anything. Just walking across a room, going to the bathroom, things like that became hard. So my sister comes in from Texas. Now, I'm weak and she can tell it. Now, when it comes to this cat, this was where I knew that things had gotten bad. It was one morning I got up, my cat is just pestering me to feed her, and I've got that pole that you saw in the last video, and I'm walking with it, and I'm still attached to the feeding tube, and she's trying to get me the feeder, and what's happening is I'm struggling to get the bag out. This cat's not understanding, and I thought I was going to collapse. I genuinely thought I was going to collapse. Matter of fact, there were times I thought I was going to just, in the bathroom, fall out. There were just times that I could not believe I was still remaining standing. So my sister comes into town. She sees how weak I am. She drives me to this doctor appointment, and it's just a regular doctor appointment. We're in there. What happened was they did the usual tests. So they take some blood. Takes a little while. We're talking to the doctor. We have to wait on it. Results come back. My hemoglobin, now your hemoglobin is supposed to be between a 14 and an 18. My hemoglobin was 5.1, so my energy levels were almost zero. That's why I was so weak. It was because the hemoglobin had gotten so low. And it's ironic, a friend of mine in Texas, she learned about what was going on with my weakness, and she goes, have you had your hemoglobin checked? And it was ironic that it turned out she was spot on. So Kim in Dallas, that was you that did that. So what happened was, I'm expecting them to give me a pill or something. And I mean, I'm so weak, even in this doctor appointment. You know, at one point I had to go to the bathroom, and I asked for a wheelchair to go to the bathroom. The day before, I'd been at a PET scan, same thing. I needed a wheelchair just to get down there. It was just bad. So that's when they tell me, we're admitting you again. And I'm like, what? And I don't want to go in the hospital again, but they're like, you have no choice. So I go into the hospital, and I'm expecting to stay there, same thing, just a few days. That visit ended up being 9 days. And let me tell you, it was not a fun visit. Now, the second time around, I had a more comfortable bed. I'm very grateful about that. I actually slept better the second time around. The only problem, though, is that, you know, you had the 3 o'clock people coming in to take your vitals. At 4 a.m., it was usually this one particular guy. He just didn't know what he just didn't seem like he knew what he was doing when it came to putting needles in there. And so what would happen is he would jab that needle into the vein, and we're talking pain. We're talking pain like you've never known before. And so I dreaded that guy coming. And it was always 4 in the morning when you're wanting to sleep. So here it is. I'm having to deal with all this, and I'm in this hospital. Now, there were some good things that happened during this visit. One was that they raised my food level about 2/3 of the way through. At first I was nothing per order. That was the first visit. And then they put me on what was called clear liquid diet, which means you could have soups, things like that. So I'm expecting to stay on this clear liquid diet forever. And they said, no, we're going to put you on soft mechanical foods, which means I can eat small bite-sized foods. I can eat soft things like eggs, things like that, which was great. And they actually gave me pulled pork for my first meal, which was great. It wasn't the best tasting pork, but it was the first time I'd eaten in 2 months. So I'm having to deal with all this, and it was not fun, but I was so grateful because my sister had come into town. So while she was there with me, you know, she came to visit me every day in the hospital. My brother was visiting me. I didn't have as many visitors. The second time around, I did have some visitors. But you know what? That's okay. People have lives. I never took it personally because it's like, I understood. People are busy. People have things going on. So I'm dealing with this hospital stay, and I wasn't enjoying it. But, you know, the other side of the coin, though, is that this is something that's serious when you talk about cancer. And yes, I'm dealing with it better than most people because I haven't experienced the pain. I'm a wimp when it comes to pain. I'm not going to lie. Now, the guy in the room next to me, who had been there a number of days, this was not a guy that had the TV up loud. He had plenty of people come visit him, family members, but his wife slept in the room with him all the time. She would take that chair, and I don't know how she slept in those chairs. Those chairs are not comfortable, but she did every day, and she was by his side nonstop, and I will give her credit for that. In his case, it was lung cancer. I think it ended up spreading to his liver, but I can tell you, I realize the seriousness of how cancer can be with people because they had a nurse come in and tell them, and it sounded like the cancer had spread, I believe, to his liver, and they're trying to tell him, we're going to be moving you to a room where you get chemotherapy. Well, if they're moving you out of a hospital room that's semi-private to a private room that deals with chemotherapy, that means they're taking this cancer a lot more seriously. And that's exactly what happened. And I'm listening to this woman cry, and she's crying like crazy. And my heart just went out to his wife because she was dealing with this. And so he was dealing with a lot of pain. He was good at covering it up. Now, the problem in his case, though, was he had been smoking 2 packs a day for 50 years. 50 years. He was so addicted to it that even with that cancer, he was still wanting to go outside and smoke. Well, besides that, Tampa General Hospital is a no smoking facility, so he wasn't going to be able to do it even if he wanted to. And I don't think they were going to allow him anyway. It was that bad. So I had to see that pain, and eventually I ended up getting moved because I thought I was going to do chemotherapy. They moved me to a private room. This was on the 7th floor. The first time was on the 9th floor. So once again, I got to know all the nurses. They were great. No complaints about them. They were wonderful. The second time around, I'm having to deal with that. Well, they put me in this private room, but it was facing a different direction. The first one was just facing another building in the hospital. What a bland view. But the second time around, I had this view of downtown Tampa that was unbelievable. You could see the Crosstown Expressway and all these buildings like this. And I remember I was sitting there looking out the window sometimes. I'm like, I don't remember that building being there. I don't remember that. And you have to understand, I worked in downtown Tampa for at least 4 or 5 years. So yeah, it was like, where did that building come from? So I'm watching all this stuff go on with my neighbor, and it was really sad because they're trying to help me also. So I had a doctor that came in, and he was a radiation doctor, and he was explaining to me about, I'm going to be going through radiation soon. It was going to be 5 days a week, and it was going to be for over 5 weeks. And by the way, I did do that 25 treatments. I'm going to go into that a little bit after this. So they had another doctor that came in to talk to me about some kind of test or something. Thank goodness for my sister being there. My sister's there. She can tune out things and listen to another conversation, even though there's 5 other people talk. I can't do that. And I don't know how she was able to do that. So this doctor comes in, this really nice lady, and she is this far from my face trying to talk to me. I could not hear her because of a nurse that had walked in to talk to my neighbor, the one who's dealing with the lung cancer. Her voice was so overpowering. I'm sitting there looking at a person this far from my face. I could not hear a word she said. Could not. My sister had to tell me later what she had said. Now, from now on, I just made the decision. I'm just going to say, please come back in 5 minutes. I mean, I don't care if it sounds rude, but you know what? I want to hear what these doctors are telling me. And I did have plenty of doctors visit it. I also had nutritionists visit. They were not just simply doing this. They were also coming in because they wanted my blood sugar issues they were concerned about. So I was getting insulin on top of that. I actually have metformin in the other room, which I'm going to have to get re-prescribed soon. So I was dealing with some of these blood sugar issues at the time. So every couple of hours, I think it's like every 3 or 4 hours, they'd come in, poke a hole in my finger, and then take blood and then tell me, oh, well, your blood sugar is this or your blood sugar is that. So I just got used to this. This was just a normal thing. And that did include in the hours where I was sleeping at night. So it was stuff that I just had to get used to. And this is all in a 9-day period. And when you're in the hospital for 9 days, you're actually going to get to know your nurses pretty well if you end up spending time talking to them, because you're there for 9 days. So it was not a fun thing. They also were telling me about I was going to have to do chemotherapy. That was something that I just will tell you I did not enjoy. I did not enjoy dealing with that part. But being there for 9 days, I will tell you is that when they would take the blood, it would leave marks. This guy, I just don't think he knew what he was doing. They also told me I had small veins in my, my hand and my elbows. So they would take blood and it would leave marks. It was at the point where I had marks here, and they started taking it from my hand. And literally, this whole part of my hand right here turned purple. I mean, just purple. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I mean, what, So I'm dealing with this from every direction. And at some point, they finally take me down to get ready for radiation. the introduction, basically. And that's where I met the radiation team. And, you know, it was something, you know, just part of that journey where you realize how fortunate you are, even with what you're dealing with. Because I saw one guy, and I actually saw this guy a number of times in that radiation area. And this really just broke my heart. He had some kind of cancer that had gone over his right eye, and it was like this. It was literally like this. It was just a big red mass. And I will not lie, it was the ugliest mass I'd ever seen. It just looked disgusting. And it looked like somebody had taken a piece of uncooked beef and just... And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm really not. I actually had compassion. I prayed for that guy. I felt so bad. But the one thing that made me feel better was at least the first time I saw him, which was at least 3 or 4 times minimum I saw him, you know, my heart went out to him every time. But the first time I saw him, he had a wife that was by his side. She was standing with him, which just made me feel so relieved to know that, okay, he's got somebody that's on his side that's helping him through that. And I'm so glad for that. So I'm having to deal with a lot of this stuff and learning about it. Now, all this, and I'm still having to try to figure out what is life going to be like? What am I going through, you know? And I had doctors that were visiting, and so finally what happened was they did release me. And so I started doing radiation. Now, here's a thing that I am just so grateful for. I'm expecting people from my church and my family to sacrifice for me. 5 days of radiation a week for over 5 weeks. PET scans that I had to do, you name it. And I'm expecting to have to deal with all this, plus chemotherapy. And I'm expecting to have them drive me every single time. Well, ironically, I mean, I'm talking normal. I feel normal. You know, I ate a meal with a friend tonight. So that just tells you, okay, yeah, I'm still dealing with this. But I want to backtrack real quick about the surgery. When they took me into the hospital, I forgot to explain this part, okay? They put some stents in me to help me swallow, okay? I think because of the coughing, that moved the stents, and so it rubbed up against the tumor, caused it to bleed. That's what caused the hemoglobin issue. So what happened was they had to go in there. They actually just took out the stents altogether. So I'm grateful about that part, but they're still talking about the size of this tumor. So, but I still felt fine. That's what I didn't understand. I could still eat food. You know, they put me on a soft mechanical diet. I can eat food for the most part. Now, I will tell you, I did have one bad experience. I might go into that later. But when it came to radiation, I drove myself every single time. No problem. Got a little thing from the cancer center, a little parking pass, and you know, I'd park there and go up to the 6th floor so I didn't have to deal with other people parking next to my vehicle and leaving huge dings on it. So every day, for 5 days a week, over 5 weeks, I'm going in there. Now, let me explain how radiation works, okay? There's a family member, an in-law. She had to deal, just a few months before I did, with rectal type cancer. And so with hers, she described it like an internal sunburn, the radiation. I never had that. They told me, you're not going to have any pain whatsoever from your radiation. Truth be told, it didn't. It was supposed to, they said it would swell it up a little bit. I might have more issues swallowing. And then after that, it would go down. I think it did swell up a little bit. But for the most part, like I said, I had no problems eating. So, but the way it works with radiation is they have this thing, you go into this room, and they have this flat table. So you have to climb into this thing, and you've got these things on both sides. And then you have to go in, and you lay down flat. You have to take off your shirt, and basically you have to reach behind and hold these 2 bars. And then for 20 minutes, you got this thing that's going around you like this. And it's basically shooting radiation into you. And I got to deal with that 5 days a week, but I never felt any pain. That was the thing that was amazing to me. They told me my hair would never fall out from the chemo. It didn't. By the way, in case you're wondering the type of chemotherapy that I dealt with, it's called FOLFOX. I've done 6 sessions. Now, when I started dealing with chemo, for the most part, I had people drive me, at least on the Thursdays that I would do it. And on Thursdays was the day that a doctor would be there, and you had to wait forever for them to get you in there. They'd get you in pretty quickly for at least the take your blood, stuff like that. But then after that, if you wanted to wait and see the doctor, you waited for a long time because the doctors were only there on Thursdays. So I had these doctors that would come see me, and they would talk to me. The chemo, it was really weird. Sometimes it would be 8 hours. The first time I did chemo, it definitely was. And you had steroids put in you. You had all sorts of stuff. They would put in stuff that was designed to kill the cancer, but it also kills good parts also. So they would put other stuff in that would help repair, for lack of better words, or it was designed to help you with the good stuff. It's supposed to do good. So they would do the hard part, and then they do the other part. And you would, I didn't feel too bad usually the day I did chemo, but usually about 3 days later, oh my gosh, it was a boomerang. It would come back and I would feel like crap. Not so much dizziness, I just felt like crap the whole day. And plus also the chemo, one of the effects of this was, one was it caused my gums to recede. They warned me that I'd probably have sores in the mouth. Originally I did. Somebody told me to take some lysine and some emergency, that stuff that you pour into a cup of water and add, and it tastes like a little orange fizzy, and you drink it. And I would take a lysine tablet, and that did help a little bit. Supposedly it's supposed to help with mouth sores. I was also doing it because of this stuff here, because it was causing my gums to recede a little bit. Plus, I just felt like crap. And also, another thing you need to understand about when you're dealing with radiation, or not radiation, chemo, was it would harden your stool. And especially when I'm weak, I don't want a hardened stool. I mean, it's bad enough dealing with the pain of what I'm dealing with, but then have to try to go to the bathroom to get this stuff out. So they started giving me in the hospital, they would give me Miralax. And I can tell you what, if you take too much Miralax, it's going to go right through you. So even if you're dealing with chemo, it will definitely keep things soft. So if you ever have that issue, Miralax is definitely a brand I'm going to recommend, especially if you're dealing with chemo. It was not a fun thing, but it was something I had to deal with, and they were giving me Miralax every day. I'm having to take something called amoxicillin. That is basically also because I'm dealing with an issue of a very loose tooth back here. So I was having to deal with that also because to help prevent infection. And incidentally, I did have to go see a dentist. So they're telling me after I'm done with all this stuff like chemo and so on, then go see this other dentist about maybe getting my mouth fixed. But for whatever I would say it's answered prayer, my mouth is healing a little bit. But it did cause some recession, but it seems like it's solidified and I'm going to do okay with that. But so I'm doing amoxicillin. They're giving me something called Magic Mouthwash. I have to take that every day. Another thing they want me to do at least 4 times a day is take some warm water. You put in just a tiny bit of salt, just a very like a pinch of, not even a pinch of salt, and then you take a little bit more, definitely more of Arm & Hammer baking soda, and you put that in there and you stir it all together. And you do it with warm water, and you basically rinse your mouth out. What exactly it does, I don't know, but it does seem to soothe things. It does seem to help things a little bit. So I'm having to take all this. They had me take an oxycodone on top of that if I ever had to deal with pain. Plus, every time I had to do chemotherapy, they had some other meds that were prescribed to me, and I'd have to take that on day 2 and day 3 after the first chemotherapy. And it was kind of nasty tasting, but you know what? Do what they told me to do. But yeah, the amoxicillin, I'm still taking that on a regular basis. They want me to do surgery on July 16th. I'm not looking forward to it. I'm not going to lie. I'm believing God for a miracle. I want God to make this thing disappear completely. Now, it has shrunk considerably the last PET scan. I am believing that it's going to be completely healed. That's just me. I know at least of 2 other people that have had miracles like that. So, and I've heard other stories. So I want to see this happen, because this surgery, my brother told me that they may have to go through my breastbone to get to my esophagus, which I'm not looking forward to. That's not a fun thing. So in the meantime, I just live my life. I'm making YouTube videos. I'm going to go to Tallahassee, shoot YouTube videos up there this week. Hopefully, if I get the chance to go up there. And but just dealing with the chemo is a hard thing. And I just want to recommend to whoever you are, if you ever have to deal with cancer or you are dealing with cancer, get a support group. Get people, if you're not part of a church, find a church. If you have just friends that can be there for you, do it. But you want people not so much just on Facebook or Instagram. No, you need people that are going to come visit you in person. And special thanks, by the way, to Tom Pear, a friend of mine who lives in the Fort Myers area. I'm going to have to go visit him now because he just had some major surgery. So it's like, okay, Tom, you're going through more than I am at the moment, it sounds like. So I'm going to go visit him while he's dealing with what he's dealing with. So have a support group. Please have a support group. I think I am most of the way through. I can tell you this is that I did have some other developments that were good. One was the dealing with bills. My brother helped me out tremendously with this. He got me where I was able to get disability payments. So I'm not I was worried. I thought I was going to have to go out and find a job. And, they're telling me the rest. Get plenty of sleep, so on. Drink plenty of water, which I do. I do definitely drink some water. So I'm dealing with that. So the disability payments are helping. Also, he got me with Medicaid. So what's happening is that besides and better for my regular insurance, I have Medicaid to help pay a lot of the hospital bills, a lot of the secondary insurance, which I am just appreciating because, I just don't know where I'd be financially if I had people saying you owe this amount of money. And I can tell you, I looked at the hospital bill one of those times, and oh my gosh, it was like $135,000. And that was for the first stay. I've been there the second time. I was there for 9 days. The first time was 6 days. So I kind of guess you can figure out there's going to be some bills. Doctors want their money. The hospital wants their money. So thank goodness for Medicaid. Thank the Lord just for helping me through this. I've also had a church that's been helping me with it. Plus, they've been making me chicken soup a lot. My pastor made me some chili, and they've been putting a lot of stuff in there that's supposed to be really good for it. So I'm just so grateful. Plus, it saved me money on groceries. I'm sure any of you know that anytime you go to a grocery store, what you're paying, it's not cheap. So I'm very grateful to just get through this, and I think I pretty much covered just about everything there is to cover. I would ask if any of you can pray for me that just I don't have to deal with the surgery on July 16th because I'm not looking forward to it. It's something I don't want to deal with. It sounds painful, and it sounds like I would be definitely not enjoying it, plus just out of it for days, and just what I've heard, that I'd be in intensive care for a while. And you know what? I would rather not be that person. But I can tell you this is that glory to God if either way, is what I would say, because I want to come through this. But if not, I also believe that God will carry me through this. And so have compassion. If you know anybody with cancer, visit them, be their friends, do something for them, It doesn't have to be anything big. It could be just a little thing. And in the meantime, I believe that this is part 2. We're not going to wait to see what will happen, because there definitely will have to be a part 3, because I'm still in the middle of this. And by the way, they told me after I did those 6 chemotherapies once every 2 weeks that there's going to be 4 more after the surgery. My brother explained to me, because he's a nurse, that it's a very aggressive type cancer, and they're going to do that just to make sure it doesn't come back. So one way or another, I'm not out of the woods yet, but I'm going to be thankful for everything I have. I have a roof over my head. If I had moved to Texas, I probably would have been in a far worse situation. So I'm grateful that I'm still here in Tampa Bay. And in the meantime, thank you for your patience with this long story. I hope you guys have a great day. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, subscribe to the channel, like the videos, and Ring the bell for further notifications of videos. In the meantime, fair winds and following seas.